Okay, cool. Ready? Hey there, fellow maker. Welcome down to my shop. I'm Bill, and today I'm going to show you how I turned a cheap toy pistol into this wonderful prop for low-budget filmmaking and cosplay. I picked this up for about 10 bucks on Amazon on a tip from my pal Evil Ted, and I was super stoked to play with all of the functions. When you pull the trigger, it pulls the slide back, doing a decent job of simulating the action on a real gun. It also makes real air quotes, gun noises when you pull the trigger. Plus, when you screw in the silencer, it changes that noise to a suppressed sound. Finally, when you pull the slide back manually, it makes a gun cocking noise. All of these functions on a cheapo toy gun are pretty fantastic when you consider the possibilities for low-budget filmmaking and cosplay. For my purposes, I wanted it to look like a normal 9mm pistol, so I started by hacking off the really wide barrel on the end of the gun. Then the pistol halves were unscrewed and taken apart to get at the guts. There's a switch in there that activates the silencer. I no longer needed that, so I simply moved it out of the way. Then, using an aluminum pipe and a PVC pipe, I made my own replacement barrel. This was hot glued onto a stable part of the inside of the gun, taking care to keep the spring in the right place, but also not get any of that hot glue on said spring. This did leave a gaping hole in the end of the slide, which was repaired with a thin piece of styrene plastic. That piece was cut out, but before gluing it down, I made sure I was totally done with the inside of the gun. This additional part would stick everything together permanently. I was happy with my progress, so I screwed the gun back together, glued my new piece on, and then I sanded it flush. Up next was those pesky screw holes. I mixed up some body filler and doled out a healthy portion into each screw hole. When that filler was partially cured, I carefully trimmed away most of the bulk with an X-Acto knife. When it was fully cured, I sanded that filler nice and flush with the plastic using sanding twigs, sandpaper, and steel wool. To prep the entire pistol for paint, I roughed up the surface with a scouring pad. This will give the paint something to grab onto. My base coat of paint was a flat black Krylon Fusion camo paint. This stuff has good coverage, it dries fast, and it bonds really well to plastic. I sprayed on a good couple of layers and then I gave it plenty of time to dry. The end of the barrel that was concealed by the slide didn't get hit with spray paint, so I pulled the slide back and painted the whole thing manually by hand. I know this will get scraped off during use, but I didn't want it to stay that super bright aluminum. The real version of this gun has a small red dot near one of the levers, so I added my own with a paint pen. For subtle edge highlighting, I added some silver rub and buff, just using my finger. I tried to be as gentle as possible with this step. You can always add more paint, but it is rather difficult to take it off. To weather the barrel, I simply took some paint off the aluminum with steel wool. That tiny bit of edge weathering really helped to add some nice realistic contrast to the prop. To protect this completed paint job, I sprayed it all down with a clear matte spray paint. That finished up the base prop and it's ready to be used in a low budget film or your cosplay. In fact, if you add a muzzle flash and some sound effects, you can get a super effective and ridiculously cheap prop for your filmmaking. Okay, cool. Ready? Now for cosplay, say a photo shoot, you can also use the action to get a really realistic shot of you shooting a gun in the middle of some action. You can hold the trigger down, keeping the slide back while you're posing to make it look like you just fired a shot. Then in Photoshop, you can tinker with the levels, add a muzzle flash, and even add a motion blurred bullet casing flying away from the gun. What's so great about this particular model is that it's meant to look like a 9mm Baretta pistol. Those things are used in all sorts of TV shows and movies. In fact, I'll have a link to an exhaustive list down in the description. So with just a tiny bit more modification, we can make this thing look like something from one of our favorite movies. For example, I used some XPS foam to make a compensator for the end of the barrel. This was a super quick and easy build using simple tools like a sharp knife, sandpaper, and a rotary tool. I used some more of that aluminum tube to extend the barrel. Also remember that most spray paints will melt XPS foam, so for this build, I brushed on black acrylic paint by hand. After adding more edge weathering with rub and buff, I had a quick removable add-on for the end of my gun that turned my toy into the perfect accessory for my next Kate Beckinsale costume. And there you go. A couple of quick tips and techniques to turn a cheap functional toy into an amazing prop for your next DIY film or cosplay. On a safety note though, this does look real enough that I would be uncomfortable carrying it around in public. So if you do plan on doing an outdoor photo shoot or an outdoor video shoot using realistic looking props, make sure you take safety precautions to make sure no one gets confused between your toy prop and a real gun. As for this particular toy that I've done here, I'm not quite done with it. I have one more big mod I want to do to it, but that's gonna have to wait for another video. If you can guess what that next big mod is gonna be, go ahead and leave it down in the comments. Of course, if you don't want to miss that video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you've already subscribed, hit the bell button down there to make sure you get notified when that video comes out. As always, all the tools and materials that I used are linked down in the description. Now, the listing for this fella here on Amazon is currently sold out. I do have it linked down below in case it comes back in the future. But I also found this at some sporting goods stores, so I'll have links to those down there as well. Hey, that's all I have for you today. This was a really fun, cheap, quick little build. Hopefully you go ahead and try it at home. Thanks for hanging with me in the shop today. Happy crafting, and I'll see you in the next build. Hey, thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you don't miss any of our new weekly prop and costume tutorial videos. For more goodies, head over to our website where you'll find blueprints, tutorial books, articles, and more. We also have a second channel for our Q&A show and extra behind the scenes videos. Thanks again, and happy crafting.